Tell me when to start. Huh? Okay, so thank you all for joining us at Let's Venture today. Let's Venture is an online platform connecting startups and investors, and this is the first of a series of conversations with investors, entrepreneurs, and other people in the ecosystem. We've called it Let's Hangout, and today we're really excited to have with us Dave Richards, who's a co-founder and partner at Unitus Seed Fund, a $20 million seed stage investment fund that focuses on startups, aiming to activate the markets for the masses. So welcome to this chat, Dave, and we're really glad we have you with us. And we're going to pick your brain for the next 45 minutes to an hour, depending on how it goes.
Sure, sounds great.
So maybe we can start with a little bit about USF's journey. How did it begin, and what was the premise when you started?
Sure. So Unitus Seed Fund has been around about 2 years now, and it is part of the Unitus Group. The Unitus Group has been investing in India for about a decade now, and so we have quite a bit of experience investing in startups and entrepreneurs serving the masses in India. We started in microfinance, and then we have moved since then into healthcare and into education, into energy, other different areas. And so as we were doing that, we consistently were being approached by entrepreneurs who, most of our initial earlier investment funds were focused a little bit later stage. And so consistently being approached by entrepreneurs who were too early for us. They were just, they weren't ready for that $1 million, that 5-10 crore check. And so we, out of that, we tried an experiment about 3 years ago now, just to meet entrepreneurs and to see the kinds of needs that they had in India. And we found surprisingly that even though there were some angel investors willing to invest in these areas, that there was sort of a lack of supply of funding and support for early stage ventures in India. So one of my friends, Dave McClure, who started 500 Startups, he was actually part of Unitus Group as well. He was experimenting at that time, and before that with getting the 500 Startups going, and was really developing a new model for an institutional seed investor. It ultimately became 500 Startups. And they were really sort of an inspiration and a front runner in figuring out a different way of approaching investing in early stage startups as a seed investor. It's very different than being a venture capital firm. And happy to go into more of that as we go along.
So how is it different? I mean, maybe you could, how is it different from being a venture capital firm?
Yeah, so obviously when we're working in investing in smaller amounts of money, but we specialize in that. We specialize in coming in at companies that are very early stage. Usually they have a prototype or a pilot that's been promising. They're an interesting entrepreneur, and that they have some relevant knowledge or skill set or experience that they're bringing to the table. And they have some challenges to figure out. They're really not ready to scale yet. They haven't really built the foundation upon which they can run fast. And so it's difficult. They basically aren't ready to take that 5-10 crore check. What they need to do is build a better foundation. And that foundation might mean bringing on 1 or 2 key people that would complement their team. It might mean improving the system that they have so that it's really ready to scale. It might mean refining their product market fit so that they're ready for, again, running fast and actually having a more focused product, or a product that people really have demand for. It might mean really figuring out their business model. One of the interesting things we find, and it's fine with us, is a lot of companies come to us and entrepreneurs come to us, and they're not quite sure what their pricing and packaging and even business model is yet. They have a service that's valued by people, but they haven't figured that out. So these are the kind of activities that a lot of venture firms those are sort of annoyances. They want all that figured out before they're ready to invest.
So what makes that, I mean, so then I suppose figuring out what to actually put your money in is quite a challenge because there are so many startups at this stage. How do
Mm,
you, what qualities do you look for? What do you look for when you're trying to identify, potential businesses to invest in?
sure. So uh, our specialty is investing in businesses that we call activating markets for the masses. So this is businesses where there's some disruptive nature to what the entrepreneur, the team is trying to do that brings benefit and value really to the masses in India. So this might be, for instance, increasing livelihood, in other words, income of people, which is a very high value to people out there, which is how to increase their income. It might be bringing healthcare, affordable healthcare to someone who didn't have access to that before through an innovation and through some disruption. Or it might
Yeah.
be creating a new model for education. So we're looking for that kind of idea, and then we're really looking for a team or an individual, preferably a team, that has complementary skills that we believe not only can kind of figure out this problem, this puzzle of sort of how to deliver something efficiently to market, but also has the ability to, we believe, to scale up. And they're going to be the team that's going to run with it. It's not like they've got to have to bring in other people to actually make it happen.
Yeah. So I guess one of the biggest things is scaling up because this is about innovating for the masses.
Mm.
And so, what does it mean to actually innovate for the masses? How is
Mm.
that different? How is that different? In the
Yeah.
first,
Maybe I can give you an example of a few things we've invested in to help illustrate.
yeah, that would
So
be great. Yeah.
yeah. So we've invested in a company called WellCare, and WellCare
Hmm.
provides eye screening services, and these allow this eye screening allows them to detect situations where people are going to ultimately go blind. Often these people are diabetics, and it's a very common issue if you have diabetes that if you don't get checked your eyes regularly, you can start going blind. It's irreversible, but if you detect it early, you can stop it. The challenge right
Yeah.
now in India is that a typical screening would cost 1,000 rupees, and for most people who have that done regularly, who are part of the masses, the low-income masses of India, this is not affordable. So the reality is most of them don't get that screening, and so
Okay.
this company figured out an innovative way to take it from 1,000 rupees to 150 rupees, and
Okay.
suddenly affordable to, and it suddenly becomes something that now every diabetic in India can basically afford to have happen once or twice a year. And
Yeah.
so done this through an innovation. In this case, it's through telemedicine and through some innovative business models to bring that to market.
Yeah. So that's a. So I guess the price and cost factor is also a huge innovation area where.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So one of the things in India is if you can create a product that's affordable and reasonable quality, there are
Mhm.
massive markets in India.
Yeah.
And the challenge is, how do you innovate to bring a product to market that can be affordable to the masses? In our case, that's what we're most interested in, because
Yeah.
that unlocks and sort of gets rid of the issue of sort of is there a market for it?
Exactly. I mean, speaking of that, I mean, mobile has been a game changer,
Mm,
um, and that's not an underestimation. So, how has it been? How has it kind of transformed this landscape in
mm,
terms of reaching out to people? And
yeah. Well, we're seeing, I think, and this is pretty much recognized now, is there's a new wave of mobile. There was a first wave of mobile where, essentially most people in India got access to voice,
yeah,
texting. And there's a new wave that's just really started in the last year or two, and it's, I think, really accelerating right now, which is getting access to services, data services on mobile. And this
yeah,
is made possible by the rollout broadly of course, of the infrastructure, the 3G, and now coming 4G. But
yeah,
even more so, it's become uh, viable because of the affordable smartphone. And
yes,
so is the emergence of particularly the Android platform, bringing, now you can get a decent basic handset that's, full smartphone capability for 2,500 rupees, and probably next week it'll be less than that. And so that is enabling sort of the ability to put a handset into, a smartphone handset into reach of most people in India, particularly if they can increase their income through that. So this is a case, like, for instance, just to give an example, one of the companies we've invested in, it wouldn't have worked a year ago, and that is a company called Mgadi, which is based in Bangalore, and what there is an on-demand mobile app for ordering an auto rickshaw. So it's kind of like what you can do now for a cab with Uber and Ola and other people. They're bringing that out to the auto driver. And previously, it was too expensive to auto drivers because of the level of cost to bring them a handset. But now you can bring them a handset, and this is something that quite easily, because of increased income, they can afford. Because they can start earning, moving their income from $500 a day up to $750, up to $1,000, etc. And so that becomes really easy to justify buying, a $2,000, $3,000 smartphone.
Yeah. So so then what is the, even with Mgadi and with some of the other companies you support, scaling up, is that something that, how do you advise, startups like this to scale up? What's the process like? Because they start off small, but then the aim is to reach out to so many. So how does that work?
So one of the things that we talk to the entrepreneurs about is, we say that right now you're in this stage that we call prepare for growth. So we often encourage companies that we've invested in not to focus too much on growth. We encourage them to really get the foundation right. So a lot of it is, so in the case of Mgadi or whatever other company, they're really experimenting right now before they go big on getting things right. Getting the experience right, or in this case, for the driver, for the consumer, getting their operations processes right, figuring out the best way for the drivers to be rated and to make sure that they're keeping the quality of service up. So there's a lot of nuance, and in the case of the masses, in this case, in the case of auto drivers, everyone knows auto drivers are a pretty quirky bunch and pretty unpredictable. And so trying to figure out how to deal with those behavioral issues and to create the right incentives and to find those 5-star drivers amongst the lakh or so autos that there are in Bangalore. So, so they're doing a lot of that iteration right now on getting those things figured out.
Yeah. So coming back to the mobile platform, I think one of the things, a lot of the startups that are part of LetsVenture and are working with mobile. So we'd like to know, what are the kind of opportunities that mobile offers that you find exciting, that you think entrepreneurs really should start taking note of?
Sure. So I think one area there's a bunch of areas, but let me talk about one area that we're particularly excited about right now. We think that and I'll talk about sort of the business side, and then we can come into how mobile applies. So one of the things in India is, as we all know, most of the economy is unorganized. I think it's, estimates of 90+% is unorganized. And many people are sort of independent workers in this economy. And so we think there's a really huge opportunity to organize the unorganized independent workers in the economy. And so one of the ways that we see, one of the technologies that we see sort of enabling that, or platforms enabling that kind of opportunity, is the on-demand mobile services concept and model. And the idea of the on-demand mobile services, some people call it ODMS, is that you're basically you're aggregating consumer demand for services through a mobile app, and then you're supplying or fulfilling that demand through offline services. So it's human services of one kind or another. So we see this as a big opportunity. Now, if you look at as an example at the United States and to Europe by a certain degree as well, because smartphones have had higher penetration in there for a longer period of time, not just at the consumer level but at the worker level, you started to see literally hundreds of different kinds of services in all sorts of different sectors, from transportation to food to home services, etc., that companies have sprung up. And we think that there's going to be a similar kind of opportunity and revolution to organize the unorganized workers, independent workers in India. So we think there's lots of sectors. We don't think one company is going to own the whole market. We think there's an opportunity for entrepreneurs to do that, but there are challenges as well that are unique to India.
Yeah. So what are these challenges? I mean, you must be seeing it every day when you work with the companies in your portfolio. But what are the the things that stand out when working?
It's a great question. We see a number of things, and I'll give you some sort of anecdote or comments or examples. So in the United States, for instance, there is a service called HomeJoy, which has done quite well, which is sort of you basically hire an on-demand maid to come and clean your place. There's a bunch of people trying to figure out how to do that in India. And the challenge in India is, can you find skilled enough workers that can deliver consistent quality, but still be independent? In other words, not have to bring them onto your roles.
Yeah.
And because the economics are a lot different. It's a very different model to have them on your rolls versus to have them be part of more of a marketplace, independent contractor. So this would be the comparison today, right? Let's just use the transportation sector of Meru, which is owned and operated, and Ola, which is clearly a marketplace. So the scalable model, if you can do it in a marketplace model and you don't have to bring people onto your roles, then it's much more scalable because you're not focused then on utilization of each worker. And it also allows workers to be part-time and to be, a lot of workers like to have the flexibility, not having to be on someone's roles and choose jobs they want to do and things like that.
Yeah.
But the challenge is how can you deliver quality? And I think that in certain sectors in India, it's more challenging because the workers may not have the equipment, they may not have the training, they may not have the standards and things like that. So you have to figure out how you're going to address those, whereas that's really much less an issue in a place like the United States in the case of cleaning, as an example. Here's another just an interesting example. So, as you probably noticed, anyone who's taken any of a cab recently, they're all have a smartphone and they're getting their jobs through that, and what you'll notice is that smartphone is plugged into their power most of the time. And one of the reasons is because a GPS drains the battery. And I think I was asking a cab the other day, like, how long does your phone go when you're using it without racing? Oh, about an hour and a half, because GPS is really a big hit on your your battery. So one of the challenges with autos is they don't have a way to plug in right away necessarily. So you've got a new issue, sort of a roadblock to overcome, as an example. So those are just a couple of examples. And I mentioned earlier the sort of quirkiness, of the auto drivers. That's kind of a nice way to say it, probably. But you're having to figure out how to work with these with people who have different kinds of work ethics and other kinds of things. And how does that work? How do you create the right incentives to get people to be loyal, etc. Those kind of things.
Yeah. And they could redesign the auto to have a proper charging, mobile charging.
That's right, exactly. So that could be a new add-on for the autos, right?
Yeah.
New business opportunity.
So when they're not looking at scale, I mean, you did say that you don't encourage them to look at scale right away, but first experiment and get the whole model right. But what about, so obviously you're trying to figure out efficiency when working with penetrating this market. And one thing you said was the marketplace versus hiring kind of model. If you can work with the marketplace of, human resources. You don't have to hire people. But
Right.
any other ways in which efficiency can be that you advise startups to become more efficient?
Sure. Well, clearly, figuring out ways to have partnerships is really very helpful. So,
Okay.
in other words, one of the challenges in these kind of things is, as I mentioned, the marketplace has two sides. You're aggregating supply and you're aggregating demand. The
Yeah.
B2C aggregation of demand is challenging and can be very challenging. It's been as we know, people can't find apps on app stores anymore because there's too many apps, and so you need to figure out ways of getting your word out about your service and
Mm-hmm.
how you reach out, and so that's one of the challenges. But if you can find partnerships in different alignments with partners who might help you, for instance, get to a certain audience and get some momentum going without having to buy billboards or some really expensive sort of traditional consumer marketing thing, then that's pretty critical because if you can acquire your customers efficiently, it basically means that you can make your money go further, right? Because you have to spend less customer acquisition.
Yeah.
That's one side of it. Then the other thing is lifetime value of customer. So, if you're having to spend, I don't know, let's say 500 rupees to acquire a customer through a channel,
Mm-hmm.
and profit on the first job is 40 rupees, then you've
Yeah.
got to get two jobs, to make that customer pay for itself. So
Yeah.
if you have ways of increasing the return, recurring usage of that customer, that
Yeah.
that allows you to be more confident. And let's say you could be confident that you could get 20 jobs or 30 jobs from that customer over a period of time. Then maybe you'd be willing to pay not just 500, but 600 or 700 or 800 rupees, and that gives you more flexibility in the channels.
Yeah.
One of the things that we've observed is online acquisition is still challenging.
Mm-hmm.
Online channels, even though it's to everyone, it's sort of the panacea. It's the thing everyone would love to do. Everyone wants viral. That's one thing. They want viral, organic marketing as a thing to get them going, and that's like catching lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
But figuring out, efficient customer acquisition
Mm-hmm.
methods, and then at the same time figuring out, how are you monetizing those customers? How are you getting lifetime value up? Because as you get, beyond sort of this seed stage, one of the key
Mm-hmm.
things that the next investor that's going to give you that big check, that 5, 10 plus crore check, is going to want to know is, what are your unit economics? What is your cost of acquisition? They want to know sort of how is this really going to, if I pour money into this thing, how is
Yeah.
this going to work?
Yeah.
And one of the things that, again, that's a little bit challenging or tricky to figure out is not only low-cost channels of
Mm-hmm.
acquisition, but also volume channels. And
Uh-huh.
often those are in conflict. And what that means is that the thought would be, a lot of people think, oh, as I scale up, my cost of acquisition will go down per user.
Yeah.
It actually turns out in the real world, it actually usually goes up.
Oh,
Because,
really? Okay.
and part of it, the reason it goes up is that the low-hanging fruit ways of reaching out to the audiences, the easier ways that you've figured out, they tap out. And so you
Exactly.
have to go to more expensive channels
Yeah.
to grow your scaling. So
Mm.
that's why it's always, it isn't something you solve once. It's something you're going to address over the lifetime of your business, is this customer acquisition thing. But getting smart about it, figuring out not only the low cost but the high volume channels, even if they're a bit more expensive,
Yeah.
is very helpful as you prepare for the growth phase.
Yes. Yes. So I think a couple of questions that come in from viewers are about how to speed up processes of I mean, how startups get chosen by investors. So I mean, I think what people want to know is is this, like you just spoke about this one the one point about the way in which you acquire customer acquisition. Is that something you look at when you consider startups for investment? Are there other things that you look at like that?
Mm.
That other kind of parameters that you consider?
So are you asking, is that sort of a key factor, the customer
Um,
acquisition?
well,
Or
no,
are you
you just said that it is a thing you look at, but I'm asking about other parameters like that you might use to evaluate startups.
Sure.
Um,
I don't. So I don't think we don't look too closely prior to investing at customer acquisition. We like to kind of understand, because usually they haven't really made that much progress on that. They've usually got sort of, they're still figuring out the product, the parameters a little bit more. They may have
yeah.
experimented. They may have some concepts that are promising, but we expect that that's going to that's going to need some more work. In most cases, the pricing and packaging and acquisition is going to need to be figured out, but it may not be completely figured out when we invest. I think I would say another factor is we often we generally prefer to invest in founding teams rather than a single founder.
Okay.
And that's an example. Now, it doesn't mean we don't, because we've done that. We have invested in single founder companies. What we found
Yeah.
is that generally is more opportunity for there's less risk in some ways, because you've got more people that bring complementary skills to the table and can share the load of the hard work that's required to get a startup figured out in those early days. And
Yes.
so, we look often to see complementary skills, so that you have, for instance, we recently made an investment in a company called Blowhorn, and Blowhorn is bringing mobile ordering to mini trucks here in Bangalore to start with, and then they want to go beyond that. But they're figuring that out right now. And the two founders, one has a deep experience in logistics, and this is very much a logistics business, which is how to move these mini trucks around and connect them up with the people who need them. And the second guy was a strong technologist. And so they brought things together. Now, they don't have, in their case, and is going to be required to add to their team over time, is strong, consumer marketing, to reach out, or whatever different channels they want to. So they're going to have. It doesn't mean that teams are complete in the founders, meaning that there's not skill sets that are still needed to be added. They don't have a finance person and things like that. So they're going to need to add skills, but at least the founding team has some core key skills that are complementary and are sort of critical for the business to be successful.
Yeah. So we've spoken about challenges in this market. What are the problems that you see that are not currently being solved? Problems at the bottom of the economic pyramid, in cities and villages, areas where people haven't really explored as yet. Where there's room for innovation yet.
Sure. Sure. Well, there's so many, but let me talk about a few. I think on a macro basis, one of the challenges or one of the opportunities. The challenges and the opportunity is that people in urban India and people who have higher incomes, they can pretty much get what they need in India. But people at low income levels, I heard a statistic that even in Bangalore, something like 80% of people live on less than 20K a month. Obviously in rural India, it's even higher than that. And so, these are very limited resources, but people have needs and aspirations and desires, whether it's they want to have education that's quality and it's going to help their kids move ahead, or young, more teenagers, they want to, get a better job, and so they want to have the right skills for that. So education, there's high demand for, and that yet there's not a lot of good options for people who have lower means. Another example is healthcare. There's great healthcare for if you have money in India, and there's really no healthcare or bad healthcare if you don't. And creating, there's huge opportunities to create affordable education services in the case of that deliver value at affordable cost that lead to an improved future, people, livelihood, capability of getting better jobs, etc. And then I think in the healthcare space, there's massive opportunities to bring, let's call it urban quality healthcare to rural India, or affordable healthcare to the masses. And one of the things we're seeing, going back to the mobile platform, is we're seeing that what platforms enable things like the a smartphone platform, connected to a 3G network and connected to sort of a cloud platform, is at a relatively low cost. People can now start building services and on top of that infrastructure. So think about in the case of healthcare, how do you deliver services such as dermatology out to rural India, where there's almost no dermatologists outside of India, outside of the cities in India? And so, could you leverage a mobile phone in a way to allow people to, whether it's allowing a GP who doesn't have the expertise of a dermatology, but someone's gone into, they've got a rash or whatever it is, they've gone in to see a local doctor, but that local doctor doesn't have the specialty. It's 100 kilometers to the place, and it's expensive in a day off work, etc. to go do that. Can they tap into maybe leveraging a mobile platform to an expert who could provide diagnostics at an affordable cost? There'd be huge demand for that in India. So that's an example where we would be very interested in investing in a company that had solved that, kind of addressed that issue.
Yeah. So there's another question that someone's asked is, as part of Unitus and your experience with Milap, what are the challenges you think investors and startups in the social impact sector face in the Indian market? And what are your suggestions for startups to raise investments? I guess two separate questions.
Okay. So the first one, it's about Milap. So Milap is a company we've invested in. They do crowdsourcing, fundraising in India. So that's what it challenges investors and startups. So I don't really view them as being in the social impact sector, and there's a lot of talk of sort of social investing, social entrepreneurs, and things like that. And I think there's a lot of confusion out there around people who are doing good things and people who are creating businesses. And I think that there's a lot of people doing good things that aren't businesses and really aren't going to scale, and that's fine. Basically, they're going to be either small businesses or they're going to be nonprofits. And that's what a lot of what people refer to as the social sector is really about. What we're most interested in is the entrepreneurs who are building great businesses that have huge scale potential, deliver great profits, and as a nature of their delivery, they're improving the lives of people through their products or services that they're delivering. And as I've given the example of Mgadi, if Mgadi can scale up to lakhs of auto drivers that are now able to double or triple their income by being part of the Mgadi platform, not only has that created a huge consumer benefit of people being able to get around India's cities more efficiently and more safely, it's also delivered a huge human benefit to those auto drivers who now have a more sustainable future.
Yeah. So there's like so you're saying there's too much emphasis on the social aspect of it rather than what the impact of it actually is, or categorize.
I guess one way of putting it is we don't actually we invest. We're investors. We invest for making profits and for getting more money back and be able to deliver that to the people who put money into our fund. At the same time, we have a specialty and a commitment to our investors that we're investing. As part of our investing, we're going to be improving the lives of people. That's our specialty, and that's sort of our commitment. And we don't see those things things we see those things as aligned, and ultimately we believe that the most impact, the positive impact, the social impact, whatever you want to call it, can be achieved if these businesses are successful and are scaling and are profitable. They're going to be able to deliver a lot more impact than if they focus just on the social first element.
Yeah. So I think another question that's there is about regulations in mobile diagnosis.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that there's still some open issues with this. This is in the healthcare space, and there are some ambiguity still around legal things. Who has liability and things like that. So I think probably what it means is in the short term, the things that are going to be more investable, more scalable, are things that are more non-life-threatening related.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And so if there's less, sort of life-threatening kind of, issues, a second. Oh, open caption.
What's going on?
I don't know. There's something that came up on the screen. Sorry.
Okay.
I think that's probably the case because there are some tricky issues with regulation.
With regulation, and there's another question about: would you invest in a company which is serving a similar market as one that you're already supporting, but in a different zone of India?
Yes.
Yeah. So.
No, I mean with an asterisk. I mean it depends, but I think we definitely we would definitely look at it.
Okay, great.
India's a big market. So yeah.
What now? Coming back to this larger picture of the Indian startup ecosystem. This is considered the third largest startup ecosystem in the world, and what are your thoughts on the pace at which it's growing and the scale, and also about the gaps, in this whole in the Indian startup system?
Yeah. Well, it definitely is. The ecosystem is definitely been maturing and growing as I've been here for the last decade. You compare it a decade ago from today, it's really very different. The mentality of people, or the positive, relatively more positive view people have of startups as a career option is really changing. So that's positive. I would think, one of the things that has been still kind of disappointing to me is that my observation is that there are a lot of, one area that's important to the ecosystem, which is not working well right now, is most of the what they call the business incubators or business accelerators. My experience has been that most of them are not graduating investable companies, and there's sort of a broken model. That doesn't mean all of them. There's a few counterexamples of ones that are achieving, but the vast majority are not succeeding in resulting in investable companies, and that has to change because that is going to be a key source. That is what's driving a lot of the innovation in the United States right now, as an example, and a few other places, is a healthy incubator accelerator system. And so I think that this needs to improve, and I think you're going to need to see, in some cases, a new generation of these accelerator incubators that have different kind of leadership. I'm not saying that all of them are well-intentioned. It's not about being well-intentioned and working hard. It's about results. And so one of the things that we're trying to do to help a little bit in this is we've announced a program where we are going to be working with a selected number of incubators that we think have promise and opportunity to get to that next level, to have a better output of companies and to create more investable companies. So we're going to be partnering with a number of, we're announcing over the next few months some incubators that we'll be partnering with, that we're going to try and work with them closely with the goal that the ecosystem, they'll be able to generate more investable companies, and then, from our case, we'll hopefully be able to invest in a bunch of those companies. So it will help us, but we think will also help the ecosystem, and hopefully these will also be an encouragement and will shine the light on sort of some incubators that are doing particularly good work and are generating best practices that work well in India.
Okay. Why do you think that, what do you think is going wrong with them? What do you think is missing, the missing link that's preventing these companies that come out to be actually investment worthy?
Yeah. Well, it's a chicken and egg problem. If you don't have the reputation of being the place where the result is you get investment, the best entrepreneurs won't go to them, won't join in.
Sure.
And the best entrepreneurs join in, and the other ones don't join in. So you end up with not the best entrepreneurs, and so you don't end up with the best, best people going to these. And then it's self-fulfilling because, then maybe they make some progress, but not enough, and so none of the investors are best. And so the reputation is that this is, sort of a nice place to go, but it doesn't really change your trajectory.
Exactly.
I also think it's a leadership question and a mindset question, which is, I think that many of the incubators are more academically driven, or they're more sort of philanthropically or charitably driven, meaning that they don't really have business models. They're not led by people who are entrepreneurs themselves, and so they just don't have the focus of finding the right entrepreneurs and then attracting the right entrepreneurs, and then adding good value, and then effectively bringing in the right investors to match up with those entrepreneurs. So there is some skill sets that are required, and as I said, some are doing it well, but unfortunately a lot aren't.
Okay. So there's another question that's there. Is India India being an agricultural country, what are the opportunities with agriculture?
That's a very good question. So we've made one agriculture investment, a firm called Vilfarm. Just to give context, so Vilfarm has sustainable agriculture products that are really sort of a hot area in India, which is basically the kinds of agriculture input products that you need if you want to grow organic products. And as you know, organic products are growing very fast on a domestic basis, but especially on an export basis in India. So that's one thing that we think is interesting. I mean, focusing on new segments that are fast growing, that are creating premium products in that case, which is organic products that have both domestic and international demand. So that's an example. I think another theory that we're intrigued by, we haven't made an investment in yet, is systems that technology systems, particularly cloud-based systems that allow farmers to be more connected into, or sort of aggregated in interesting ways. So whether that be, one of the things that's happening in India right now is there is a big, even though India's behind the world in this, there is a growing model for contract farming in India, which means you have these big buyers who pre-commit to buy from usually thousands of farmers for, let's say, so many tons of tomatoes or whatever it is they're buying. And because of India's very fragmented farm ownership, where most people are small farmers, it's very complicated and expensive for those contract farmers to find the right farmers and then manage the relationships with those thousands of farmers to get their products. So I think there's interesting innovation opportunities in that space, using technology and mobile technology in particular, with cloud technology to manage that better. So that's another example. And then agriculture technology in general, whether it be helping use water better for farmers, other kinds of technology that is accessible. The challenge in India is it has to be very affordable, because most farmers will not make sort of forward invest. What they want to do is they want to see a return on investment in 3 to 6 months. So if they have to put I don't know, 10,000 rupees, they want to see that 10,000 rupees back in 3 to 6 months in sort of higher profits. They have a very short time horizon. So if you're doing an innovation, it can't be, well, it'll pay back in 2 years, or even a year. Like that's too long. So there are some those are the kind of challenges that you have to overcome.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, even 15 years ago, if someone had said you're going to be looking at agriculture, or healthcare, or education in India as investment from an investment point of view, this would, I think a lot of people wouldn't wouldn't have even like understood what you were talking about. But now these are all like the big opportunities tomorrow. So this thing of synergizing the two goals of having an impact that's positive, but also making profits. Is that something that what advice can you give to entrepreneurs who want to do that? And because it is it's something to kind of, you have to streamline both so that both things work. I mean, profit has to be made at the end.
Yeah. Well, I think the way that we look upon this is we really believe this is a big opportunity as an investor. And we're a little bit, Unitus Group has been doing this for 10 years now, and we continue to sort of be early investors or early adopters into some of these new sectors, because we believe we see the future where this is where the opportunities are. There's clearly going to be opportunities in the urban environments and in things that are focused purely on sort of lifestyle of the growing middle class in India, but we think this is also a big opportunity, and the only way we believe that it's going to be scale is to be profitable. I mean, it has to have built-in profits. See, one of the things you need to realize, people need to think about, is when you're an entrepreneur, you kind of you're so focused on sort of executing, you're so focused on how much money am I going to have to raise and thinking like that, but ultimately, you need to get to the point where you're not raising more money, and where your business, to continue its growth, can generate enough profits that you can reinvest. You're not having to go back and raise more money from people. And so that's, if you want something that's going to ultimately have that scale, and if you having built-in impact, then that is something that you have to really think about. So we really encourage entrepreneurs and what we focus a lot on entrepreneurs is, how do we really figure out this to be a great business? Yes, it's serving people, and it has to, in our thing, we want to see sort of a positive benefit being on people, but first and foremost, this is a business, and so it has to be innovative, it has to be differentiated, it has to be sustainable, it has to be creative. I mean, all these things that good businesses are about.
Yeah. So I think Manoj has asked another question about India had a couple of decades ago had highly successful social impact ventures like Amul and Lijat. However, we do not see any social ventures so big now. So although there's a lot of supporting infrastructure. So I guess Amul and Lijat were cooperatives. So are there lessons to be learned from the cooperatives like Amul and Lijat that were hugely successful and made huge huge difference to millions of people.
Right. So I think there's still opportunities to still create AMULs. So I don't think this is a zero sum, or that, for instance, even venture-backed companies are the only way to grow a successful and scaled operation. I also don't think, it has been demonstrated by the R&I business, that you even have to be a for-profit driven business. I mean, there are ways of creating sustainability and scale and world-class, operations without, having a for-profit model. So I don't think we have to say that there's only one model that works. And I think that there will be different models that work. Or, another comment is, innovation doesn't always come from startups. Sometimes it comes from big companies.
Yeah.
And so I think that some of India's big companies, or big companies working in India, are going to create some of the more interesting businesses in the future as well. You've seen companies like Google and other ones that have created new business lines that are very innovative and are market leaders, even though they're a big company. So it doesn't mean, but I do think that that there is going to be a place for startups that that have the support of a professional investor, over time, that helps them in realizing their vision, and that can be helpful in some cases.
So another question is about Unitus. Does Unitus have a special focus on social enterprise, or is it not? Or do you invest in companies that aren't in the have a social? Yeah.
So one thing that, as I was mentioning a little bit earlier, is we don't invest in social enterprises. We don't invest in social entrepreneurs. We invest in businesses that have that have a built-in impact on populations. And I think that is sort of we do have people that approach us that have very worthy ideas of things that they want to do and to improve people's lives, but are just really not investable businesses, and that's fine. And we encourage them. There are other kinds of ways to do funding out there and different things for those, and so we encourage that because we think there's lots of different things that are needed in the market. And then the second part of it is, are we sector agnostic? General answer is yes. Highlight on our website, a number of areas where we're seeing the most opportunity. We're seeing the most, sort of interest that we're focused on. So that would include healthcare, education, mobile commerce and value-added services, marketplace, e-commerce. There's a few other areas: retail, agriculture, etc. So we have some areas, but in general, it doesn't mean we won't invest in other things.
Okay. So I have one last question for you. What are the trends that you see, that you're observing, and how do you see, what are the trends you're observing in India, in this emerging market, and what do you forecast for the next few years? What would you like to see happening also?
Sure.
So
that's a big question.
That's not one question, 3 questions for you, but the end.
I think there's a few things going on. I think one is there's going to be, these are just random, they're not in a particular order or importance or insight. One is, I think there's going to be more seed funds in India. And you've already started to see, I think they're going to come from 2 directions. You're going to see people who've been angel investors decide that they think they can do a better job at creating a pooled fund, an institutional seed fund model, and we think that's great. I mean, there's need for more seed investment, and we think there's going to be more organized seed investing in addition to a growing amount of angel investing in the market. The second direction, you're going to see, in some cases, I think some of the VC firms spinning out seed funds rather than doing the sort of sidecar-ish thing that they do today, which is they throw a little bit of money at startups in seed stage, and it's not their specialty. So I think we'll see that, because I believe that seed funds are here to stay. they're a new player in the marketplace. I think there's, on the trends front, hopefully we're going to see improved business incubators, business accelerators that are attracting and adding value and getting more investable graduates. I think you're going to see more people exiting the corporate world to do startups, because startups are a lot more interesting, and they allow people to be a lot more creative, and they allow people to do more interesting things than just being a cog in a wheel in a big company. And there's going to be economic opportunity. It's not going to be as much a choice of sort of having fun versus making money, or earning money. And then, I think there's platforms that are going to continue to drive. There's existing ones such as the mobile platforms and the smartphone platform and the cloud platforms and things like that. We also think that a platform like Aadhaar is going to enable a whole new generation of businesses and services. And there'll be other platforms that come along as well. So as you're an entrepreneur, platforms are your friend. They help you get to market more efficiently. They open up new disruptive opportunities. So as an entrepreneur, look at what platforms can you stand on top of, leverage to help you build new kinds of businesses that couldn't have been built before. Because those are some of the ones that are going to be the most interesting and successful going forward.
Okay, so I think that's it for this first Let's Hang Out with Dave. Thank you so much, Dave. It's been an absolute pleasure listening to you and asking you all these questions. And I really hope that all the people who've been watching this have also enjoyed and found it useful. I'm sure they have. So that's it for now. Thanks a lot, Dave. And
Thanks.
yeah, thank you. Bye. Yeah.
Bye now.
Bye.